We'll just give everyone a moment to get connected here. Bringing everyone into the room. It takes just a moment for everybody to get audio. Everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us. We will wait just 1 minute because of a lot of people have entered the room, but it will take just a moment for everyone to get microphone and audio access. And once we have that, I'll get us underway. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Summer Fall 2021 course preview for the JMU Lifelong Learning Institute. I was telling Sue this morning, it feels like we were just connected by Zoom. We had our last Zoom time session and our last class at the end of May. We took a little bit of time to reset for what we're calling summer and fall because we begin courses next week. But the purpose of today's meeting is to look at what's new and different for this coming semester. It's one long semester that's going to begin at the end of July, and we will continue through early December. So we're starting about 2 months in advance of what our normal schedule would be. But I want to give you an idea of what you have to look forward to over the next few months and highlight some of the courses and some of the people you can expect to learn with and from as we get this new year underway. Hey, Sue, as you're managing the meeting, thank you for managing that. Anyone who's unmuted, please go ahead and mute their microphones so that we don't get feedback, please. A couple of announcements before we get started talking about the courses and the new semester is tonight is one of the first member events at Bricks and Columns from 4 to 6 p.m. We have our monthly social event. We invite you to join Jackie Gerard, our hospitality chair, and her committee in McGackiesville at Bricks and Columns Vineyard. You're welcome to bring your own food, bring your own snacks. The venue has wine available for purchase. Masks are not required for fully vaccinated individuals. And if you've been at Bricks and Columns, you know they have a huge lawn and an open patio. So whatever you need to feel comfortable with regard to distance, it's available to you as long as we have nice weather. So these are monthly social events that we plan regularly for members. We invite you to join us tonight. And I think there are 20 or so people already registered to attend. If you haven't registered, feel free to show up and bring a friend. It's just a good way to learn about the lifelong learning community, a good way to get social and get connected. Well, let me go back. Another announcement that I want to make is this is a special year for us. So this year marks our 25th anniversary. We're preparing plans to have a year-long celebration of how far we've come and where we're headed as a learning community. But I want you to know about this specific date so that you can put it on your calendar. On Thursday, October 14th, this is the week that the Institute began in 1996. So it's the week of back in 1996, we started hosting fall classes. 4 classes were available to about 96 students, and it took place during the first weeks of October. So on October 14th, we're going to have an anniversary banquet that's going to be hosted at the new Atlantic Union Bank Center. We want you to save the date because we're going to be sending out details about registration. And this is one of your new membership benefits. If you're a member of LLI, once you activate your membership, you're going to be invited to attend this anniversary banquet. And part of your membership is a complimentary ticket to this event without any additional fees. More information about this will be forthcoming as we get the new semester underway. Sort of a semester overview at a glance. This is a full semester. We're trying to get everything back up to full capacity. A normal fall semester would be 40 courses. We're offering 40 courses. 11 of those are going to be offered online. I will point out how you know which classes are online when I show you some screenshots of the website later. But a lot of you told us, I like online learning. Some of you told us, I don't do online learning. So we wanted to make sure that we built in and kept some online options, even while we resume our in-person activities, which the majority said, I'm ready, I'm comfortable, I'm looking forward to getting back in person. And I'm going to share some information a little bit later about what we're doing to try to keep everyone safe when you return to campus. One big change is our membership fee structure. I want everyone to know, if you haven't seen the emails that we sent out last week about what's new and different with regard to fees. Pre-pandemic, fall 2020, let's just compare fall semesters. First-time members, they got the entire first year free. They did not pay a membership fee. Returning members paid $20 per year for the membership fee. Working with our advisory board, we're thinking about how do we secure the Institute long-term. We've learned a lot about the financial challenges that can happen when services are interrupted. The pandemic was just a difficult year for us, as it has been for everyone. But we learned some things about how can we ensure that we're here for our community, even when those services are interrupted. So we made some changes to the membership fee structure. First-time members, their first semester is free. So someone who's never participated in the Institute, they want to join us. This is sort of like a trial period. They do not pay a membership fee for the first semester. They start paying in the second semester. Returning members, the membership fee is either offered $20 per semester or $35 for the entire year. Because we're starting earlier, we started earlier in the spring, we're starting earlier in the fall, we have this summer segue into fall, we now provide 8 full months of programming. So you can think about that annual fee as less than $5 a month. You get all the benefits of membership, including the ability to attend those social events, those special events, and register for classes. But this is what's different with regard to the membership fee. Couple of things you need to know. I'm just reiterating in case you haven't had a chance to read through those emails, or maybe you haven't received them. And if you're not receiving them, contact Sue. She'll get you get things sorted out to get you on that contact list. But these are the things you need to know as we head into classes next week. One, our first class begins next week, Monday, July 19th. We have a phased approach where next week we bring about 3 classes online. The week after that, we bring 2 more, and then we bring more online in August, and it's just a staggered approach. But do look at the website following this presentation, because some of those classes will come online immediately. The summer and fall schedule includes 20 weeks of programming. If you're a returning member, you're used to 2 5-week sessions. Pre-pandemic, we would offer 10 weeks of programming in the fall. This year, we're offering 20 weeks of programming from July to mid-December before we go home for the holiday break. We will offer both in-person and online classes, so you have a choice of how you feel comfortable learning. You can take both, but classes are either exclusively in-person or exclusively online. There are no classes that blend those formats. And registration for everyone for every class begins tomorrow at 10 a.m. So we encourage you to do this online. We've tested the online system to make sure this week that it's stable, that it's ready for maybe that initial rush. But if you feel the need to come down to the office, Sue and I are going to be here. Some of you will be coming to the office to provide vaccination records. So we will be here to make photocopies of those as well throughout the week and in the coming weeks. Speaking of vaccination records, we have new campus safety guidelines. These are guidelines given to us by James Madison University. So it's something passed on to us that we're implementing in a way that's consistent with campus policies. One is JMU requires students to be fully vaccinated before returning to campus. Some of you have asked, are there exemptions? Yes, there are exemptions. There's so many details related to this new campus safety policies that I just encourage you to go to our website, www.jmu.edu/LLI, and that has full information about our safety policy and procedures, qualified exemptions for medical or religious reasons for people who cannot or choose not to get vaccinated. And it gives you some guidance about how to submit your vaccination records to Sue in our office. Sue is coordinating the collection of these records. That lets us know how much risk we're carrying for any and all courses, and we'll just be able to know. We're hosting a course with 30 people, 2 people are unvaccinated, and it just tells us that's a different dynamic than a class where people are 100% fully vaccinated. So with that, I do want to welcome, we have 9 presenters today who's going to share about their courses. For each presenter, I will provide an introduction and then I will turn it over to the instructor. Each of them will have 5 minutes to tell you about their class. And at the end, we've reserved time for Q&A. So your microphones are intentionally muted. We're going to have an open discussion following all the presentations, which will happen in sequence. And it's my pleasure to introduce the first instructor scheduled for today. And I wanted to put Clarence first for 2 reasons. One is Dr. Clarence Geier is presenting on location here with me in the Ice House. He's in room 104. I'm next door in 117. But Clarence will be leading a session for us this fall called Ancient Civilizations of Highland Mexico. And he's going to be talking about these different civilizations as part of his presentation. This class will be offered in person. It's going to be here in the M104 in the Ice House from October the 4th to November the 1st. It's offered on Monday mornings from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. The cost of this course is $40. It will be available for registration tomorrow. And I just want to pause. This will be the longest introduction I give to an instructor, but I want to thank Clarence because as I'm going through our archives, preparing for ways to celebrate our 25th anniversary, I noticed in year 1, year 2, there's photo evidence of Clarence providing some of our earliest programming. And I scanned these photos this morning where Clarence was providing one of our first brown bag lunch presentations hosted by the JMU Lifelong Learning Institute. And Clarence, I just think it's amazing that the commitment that you've shown to our community. And here in 2021, 25 years later, you remain part of our teaching faculty. You remain part of our learning community. And I just wanted to pause and say, thank you for your support. Thank you for your continuing friendship throughout the years that you've shown to lifelong learning. And with that, I'll stop my screen sharing so that you can get your presentation underway. But Clarence is just one example. The commitment has been longstanding among our faculty. And we know some of you as members, I see you on the call. Some of you have been members for 24, 25 years as well. And we thank you as well for being with us and rejoining us this fall. Clarence, I'm seeing your screen. Let's make sure that your microphone's unmuted.
He is muted.
Yep, we're just going to get him unmuted and
how's that?
you're good to go, Clarence.
Okay. As many of you have taken my classes before will know, this is going to be primarily a lecture course. But unlike going to Europe and going to North America, what I'm going to concentrate is on probably some of the more fascinating societies that developed in the area of what is known as Mesoamerica, which includes most of central and southern Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, Yucatan, and so forth. When I originally started to develop this course, I was going to make it a general presentation, but, okay, There we go. There's just too much, like in many cases. But I do want to make a brief reference to Mesoamerica to help explain what I'm going to be doing. If you took a look at Mesoamerica, there are three basic environments. There's an unbelievably lush, classic tropical environment. This is the heavy rainforests. The Central Highlands, which is Mexico primarily, and central and southern Mexico, actually, because of the elevation formed by mountain ranges and so forth, it's a climate very similar to what you might think of as North Carolina, South Carolina, and so forth. But then up here, you get into what's this massive desert region, which is generally known as the Gran Chichimeca. This area, over time, has been probably one of the most active areas of cultural development, civilization, literally in the world. Starting primarily in the tropical area, you have the Olmec, about 1200 BC to 5400. Everybody's heard of the classic Maya culture, which classically developed around 80, 100, and 200 AD. But the fact of the matter is, there's simply too much to talk about, so we're not going to deal with those at all, except in collateral information. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on what is known as the Central Highlands. And if any of you have been to Mexico City, that general area, you'll know what the Central Highlands of Mexico basically are. It is an upland area. It is a large valley area surrounded by mountains, volcanoes, and so forth. But between about 200 BC and about 700 AD, one of the greatest and most powerful civilizations to ever exist literally on Earth was developed. And this was the civilization known as Teotihuacan. And that is the first one that we are going to concentrate on. It ends about 700 AD, okay? It's a very brief and terminal end. There's a period of time where you get instability in the Central Highlands. There's a brief period of rise with the Toltec. But what we're going to focus on as a second part of the course is on the Aztec, which are a remarkably recent culture, emerging probably not more than about 1400 AD and lasting till the Spanish conquest around 1521. It is probably one of the most well-known, certainly from the standpoint of general conversation, but we'll be dealing with that as well. Teotihuacan is the poster child of Mexico. To this day, it is probably one of the most fantastic archaeological sites literally on Earth. What you're looking at here is the Temple of the Sun, which begins to be constructed around 200 BC. And to give you some idea of the stature, those little dots that you see up there going up there are people. It is just an absolutely huge complex. Efforts have been made to get an idea of what the thing looked like in its period of cultural development, at the high point of its development, and so forth. The town itself is much more massive. Here again, you can see the Temple of the Sun. Massive complex of temples, towns, city dwellings. Over the past probably about 50 years, this town has become much better understood. And yet the irony is, it's all archaeological. Despite the fact that we're talking about one of the most powerful civilizations to ever exist on Earth, there is virtually not a single written record that documents anything about it. Instead, it's come as a result of archaeological analysis, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the town. We're going to talk about the architecture that was there. We're going to talk about the tremendous influence that Teotihuacan have, literally at one time controlling virtually everything from the desert north all the way into the lower parts of Yucatan in this general area here. It's one of the few communities that actually had an influence actually into the American Southwest. We're going to talk about, obviously, the politics, the architecture. We're going to talk about the rise of religion. This is the god Quetzalcoatl, which first appears at Teotihuacan. This is known as the Earth Mother right down through here. But again, religion is extremely powerful because all these cities that we're talking about, empires, are basically theocracies. They are civil governments that are basically managed through religious power and observation. Teotihuacan ends around 700 AD. We're then going to turn to the Aztec, again, one of the more well-known, 1400 to 1520 AD. I mean, look at it, 1400. This is only about 91 years before Columbus sails the ocean blue, yada, yada, yada. The Aztec arise in the Central Valley of Mexico, right in this general area here. Basically the same place as Teotihuacan, but at a very different time with a great deal of influence. The Aztec are really a confederation of three different tribes: the Mixtec, the Texcocans, and the Aztec. They're three different groups altogether. You can see where Teotihuacan is in this general area. It is a fascinating complex because what you find is a period of time when there was so much warfare that these three groups finally began to realize that instead of continually beating each other up, if they join forces, they can beat everybody else up and become basically the power force that we come to know of with the Aztec society. This gives you a general idea of the basic expanse where they actually come through military control. And each of these zones represents an episode of actual physical conquest of the Aztec people, going all the way from the Gulf of Mexico all the way over here to the Atlantic coast. Tenochtitlan, going back here, Tenochtitlan is right here. Tenochtitlan is a Mixtec city, but it does become the Aztec capital. It is an island city that is joined to the mainland by three major causeways. The center of it is the major religious center of the Aztec Empire. A fascinating place, a bloody place, a place of real history. But we'll get into that again, talking about the architecture that is Aztec, the basic plans, the educational backgrounds, and so forth. We're also going to talk again about religion. You can't separate an understanding of the Aztec from their religion. This is their primary god. This is the god Huitzilopochtli. He is the patron saint of the Aztec state. He is the patron of war. And what we will find here is that warfare is the foundation of their social organization. It is the foundation of their religious organization. It is the foundation of literally their identity as human beings. And as we are so oftentimes educated by some of the more popular movies and so forth, human sacrifice is a focal point. The sacrifice, the shedding of blood, whether it's on the battlefield or on the sacrificial altar, becomes a primary thesis of what the Aztec culture is all about. Despite that aspect of it, truly skillful architecture, beautiful artisans, and actually what we're going to find is that the Tlatoani, or the king of the Tlaxcalans, probably opened one of the first. It's almost like a library, very similar to what was formed at Alexandria. While everybody else was tearing themselves apart, he actually established one of the first libraries and educational facilities in the area of Mexico and Central America. So that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about and where we're going to be going. I'm going to try to find some textbooks. They're hard to come up with. There's a lot of new information. Unfortunately, the textbooks are pretty pricey, so we'll see how that works. But in any case, that's pretty much an overview.
Thank you, Clarence. And again, we're going to have questions at the end. So with each of these transitions, we will move on to the next instructor. If you have questions, you can enter them in the chat window, or you could just hold them to the end when we have time reserved. The next person I'd like to introduce is a new instructor, May Stoll, who has taught West African style percussion for almost 14 years. May recently moved to the Valley from Austin, Texas, where she established an active drumming community and led over 300 public performances. I want to welcome May as a new LLI faculty member. She has some experience teaching with lifelong learning institutes and programs in other states, so we're fortunate to have her as part of our community. And May's class will be offered in person beginning August the 3rd. It will continue through August 31st, offered on Tuesday afternoons from 1:30 to 3 p.m. The cost is $40.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is May Stoll, and as you heard, I hail from Austin, Texas. I have been in the Valley, in this beautiful Valley, for about 2 years. And I am establishing a community here, and I have many drummers. And last year was a little disruptive, but I am gathering my my people again, and it's just a joy to me to be able to drum with others. So this class is going to be focusing on West African style drumming, hand drumming. So the wonderful thing about hand drumming is that you do not have to have any music experience whatsoever to have a good time and to actually learn and enjoy your time here. The class will be in my studio. I don't know if you can see, let me get out of the way so you can see some of my drums. These are all authentic West African drums. And what I love to do is really introduce people who have not been exposed to this wonderful music to the drums and to the culture and to the rhythms and after you're a beginner and if you want to continue further, that's great, because I would love to continue to hone your skills in that regard as well. So how the session will be structured, first of all, the main focus of this 5 weeks together, or however long it is really the focus is on the enjoyment of the experience and the enjoyment of actually putting your hands on this drum and drumming together. And along the way, you will learn the basic techniques of how to sit and how to hold the drum and the basic way to produce the right sounds out of the drum. But you're not going to get a certificate from me saying you're a djembe player after this. So that's not the focus, right? We will learn the basics, and then we will do some fun drills to just get you warmed up. And then we will focus on the maybe 1 or 2 authentic West African rhythms. And these are called polyrhythmic, because they are each built on different parts. So we will learn the parts, and the parts that I call patterns, they're usually quite easy. So it's easy for people, even without any experience whatsoever, to learn. But then the joy is in putting those together and hearing and feeling and experiencing the harmony of those things coming together. So there's usually a cultural story or tradition associated with these rhythms. And along the way, we will talk about that and maybe see some slides or pictures or even hear recordings about that. So that's what a typical session would be. And sometimes, depending on time, we will have an opportunity to just kind of make stuff up at the end of the pattern and at the end of the class. And I'm sure you've heard of drum circle. As a matter of fact, these drums are associated with drum circles. That's what people know them in, right? Drum circles. I don't like to call them drum circles because I like to call it rhythm circles, because when we get to that stage in the class, we will be using all kinds of other percussion toys to have fun with. And it's amazing how powerful and how satisfying it is to just sit down with a little bell or a little rattle and work with others to create something that is very pleasing and very enjoyable. So sometimes we will end the class that way as well. Very quickly, I will just show you, this is a djembe drum. This is made in West Africa, and it is made out of a piece of tree trunk and a goat skin. And I'm sure the sound is not going to come out very well right now, but this is how it sounds. Drums. The other drum that we will try. And that is the dun-dun drum. So anyway, I hope you sign up for this class because we're going to have a lot of fun. Bye.
Thank you, May. And what people experienced there was we would hear the drum, and then Zoom, with its smart technology, filters out the sound of the drum because it thinks it's a background noise. So we would hear the first few notes and then it would silence it, but that was
Okay.
what was happening. May, I want to thank you for making your drums in studio available to us as part of that class, a part of this class. It's something, not just are you providing instruction, but access to the space and the tools to create music with. And so thank you for making those additional things available to us as part of this course. The next instructor that I'd like to present is Jennifer Cottrell, who will be teaching a cycle or multiple Zentangle courses. I haven't put specific titles because these courses will begin August the 4th, and they continue throughout the majority of the semester. The last class ends on November 17th, but do know there are 4 different courses being taught by Jennifer. She'll provide highlights. All courses are $40. Pay attention to the description if you go to register for these online. Some require additional materials that come with the additional fee for consumable supplies. Some do not. One reason that we decided, and I'm going to stop my share because I know Jennifer is going to be sharing some of her artwork as well. One of the reasons we decided to keep these courses by Zoom is because Jennifer has done a tremendous job over the last year just expanding our audience of lifelong learners. Some of the people who have participated in these Zentangle courses are joining and connecting with JMU Lifelong Learning in places as far as California. So Jennifer, thank you for everything you've done to expand our outreach and education as a program.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. It's so great to see some familiar faces and names. I see some of my Tanglers are here today. So Zentangle is a meditative art form where we do repetitive patterns. And I've been teaching for LLI, I think for 7 or 8 years. And so I came up with 4 different series to take us through the fall. And I'm going to show you, I have samples of 3 of the 4 classes. The one I don't have a sample of yet. This kind of snuck up on me, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All of a sudden, I'm not allowed to share my, wait, here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, let me get something out of the way here. So this is called Compass Rose. And this will be our first session in August. And this happens to be done in, as you can see, green and black. This is a gray piece of paper. So this will be one class. And I used to require everyone take a beginner's class and then decided that when COVID hit and people just needed an art fix, why not let them come? So you don't have to have done Zentangle before. We take it step by step and pretty slowly, but this is just an example of what we'll do in the first session, or first 4 classes in August. In September, we're going to move into another project that I don't have a sample of, but we'll be working with the color wheel and a variety of colors and Zentangle patterns. And then in October, we're going to move into International Fun. COVID did a lot for me as an artist, being able to take classes all over the world. This was a class I took in Russia this past Sunday morning. This was another one in Russia a while back. This is from a Taiwanese artist. This is from a Canadian. And this is from a gal from the Netherlands. So I will be teaching 4 different classes from 4 different countries of things that I've learned. And fortunately, the Zentangle community is extremely kind and generous, and I have permission from these teachers to share their classes with my Zentangle students. And then in November, we're going to go in with pointed pen and gold metallic. And I don't think the camera is really doing this justice, but this is a paint called Fine Tech, and it has mica in it. And in real life, this is as vivid as 24 karat gold. It's very sparkly and really pretty. We're going to be working with pointed pen, which some of you might know more as a calligraphic pen, a pointed pen. It's like a fountain pen. And we'll be playing with that on black, on other tiles, and we'll be playing with some other metallics. So this is just kind of a sidestep from Zentangle, although definitely in the Zentangle realm of repetitive patterns. So we're gonna have a good time. I think we always do. And if you take a look at the descriptions, it'll give you, I'll go ahead and stop sharing here. It'll give you the descriptions of the classes. If you look at the description and you do have some of the supplies already, you don't have to purchase supplies, but a lot of people don't necessarily have what we're going to be using. So if there's any doubt, feel free to reach out to me and I can let you know if what you currently have will work, or if what you have, we can adapt to work for whatever class we're working on. So I'm excited to start it and have some Zentangle fun and some meditation and just relax and enjoy. So that's what I've got going.
Thank you, Jennifer. As I said in your introduction, we're just so impressed with what you were able to do in a year that we thought that everything was retracting, and yet you grew this community of artisans, and it's just amazing the feedback that we've gotten. So kudos to you for how well you're managing those online programs.
Well, thank you.
The next person I'd like to introduce is Dr. Ann Henriksen, who will be teaching a class, This Is Us, the biology of things that make us who we are. As I mentioned with Clarence, Ann has been a longtime friend of the university and of lifelong learning. And like Clarence, and we'll hear of others when I introduce them, we have a group of just very skilled instructors who are faculty emeriti here at James Madison University. And Ann is a professor, or was a professor, in the Integrated Science and Technology Department for 19 years. But I just share that to know that we do draw upon university faculty who have long careers in academia. So when you take one of these classes, you're just going to be in good hands with people who have had a lot of practice in their discipline and are experts in their field. But this course is going to be offered in person beginning September 2nd through September the 30th, offered on Thursday mornings from 9:30 to 11:38 a.m. The fee here is slightly higher. It's listed at $50, but with that, all of your materials are built in. Ann is developing just a custom course binder with additional learning materials for each of these 5 modules. And instead of collecting that on site, we've just collected that $10 material fee with your registration fee so that everything's taken care of up front. But that's the justification for this, the higher cost. It's just consumable supplies and learning materials. Ann?
Thank you, Rodney. I am going to share my screen now. And let me see, there's my desktop. Let me get the presentation started. Great, thank you again, Rodney. It's my pleasure to teach for LLI. Teaching for LLI is all the best things I got to do when I was a faculty member without having to do all the awful things like committee meetings and give grades and give tests. So, and I just love the lifelong learning students. I'm just so blessed to have every one of them in my life. Sometimes I'm in the grocery store and I run into someone who took one of my classes, and then we end up having a great discussion. This has been a blessing in my life. So this class is called This Is Us. It's the biology of things that make us who we are. And I've selected 5 biology topics to talk about in this class. These classes are all intertwined in that they build on one another. So you must sign up for all 5 of them as one course. So this is some information about the class. First of all, no prior knowledge of biology or chemistry is assumed or necessary. If you're a smart person who can absorb things, everything will be explained from the beginning. I will not assume you understand molecules or reactions or anything like that. Everything will be taught from the beginning. Secondly, it's 5 consecutive weeks, every Thursday morning in September. That's every Thursday morning in September. September actually has 5 Thursdays. And we'll have a 10-minute break so we can all walk over to Black Sheep and get a cup of coffee to come back for the second class, or second half of class. Class content will build on previous weeks. There will be a course binder with materials for every single week. I've already started working on this. I did a lot of this when I was a faculty member. I always had a course binder in my classes. I will supply you with the materials every week, so you will have certain PowerPoint slides, you'll have notes pages, you'll have diagrams, and maybe even an article to read. And then when this is over, you'll have a binder full of materials from this class. I will always send a weekly email with information about the upcoming class. There'll be YouTube videos to watch. These last anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes, but they're a great way to prepare for the class. They have the overall ideas, and YouTube videos are just really fun. I try to pick really good ones. Sometimes they're funny. And there'll be optional enrichment reading and optional videos for people who are interested in taking their knowledge a step farther. So let's talk about the material that's going to be taught in the class. So week 1 is called DNA, your personal genetic hardware. We're going to talk about what exactly is DNA, what is the structure of DNA, and how does the structure of DNA relate to the idea of genes? Like, where are genes on DNA? What is a gene? When someone says you have a gene for blue eyes, what exactly does that mean? We're going to talk about how exactly does DNA control our unique body? What is the process by which DNA makes you, you? And how can DNA go wrong? What things can go wrong with DNA? The next week topic will be epigenetics. And epigenetics is your personal genetic software. You can think of your body like a computer. You think of heredity like a computer. You have your genetic hardware and your genetic software. And so this will help address the question of exactly what is it that controls DNA. What exactly is epigenetics? It's like the new thing now. This is like the new topic. And how does it do that control of DNA? And how can epigenetics go wrong? A lot of diseases that we are currently seeing, like things like cancer, autism, can be traced back to epigenetics, and epigenetics that have gone off the rails. The next topic is going to be called gut microbiome. This is microbes your life depends on. And we all have heard the newest thing about microbiomes and probiotics and prebiotics and that stuff. And what exactly is a microbiome, and where is it, and what makes up our microbiome? Your microbiome is intimately linked to your state of health and disease. And just as a gee whiz fact, I'm sure many of you have heard of the condition called C. difficile, or abbreviated C. diff, which is an intestinal infection that is extremely deadly. Well, it turns out that antibiotics are not particularly effective against C. diff, and a lot of people who get antibiotics for C. diff get it again. The latest and greatest newest treatment for C. diff is actually poop transplants. It's called fecal transplant. Why? Because it turns out that people that don't have C. diff have a different microbiome in their intestinal tract than people who seem to get it. And people who get C. diff have a very difficult time reestablishing a proper microbiological environment in their intestinal tract. So it seems like the secret to getting your intestinal tract all better is a poop transplant. And so that sounds crazy, but if I had my choice, I'd take that over antibiotics any day. So another thing is, how can our microbiome go wrong? And it can go wrong. And so we'll talk about that. The next topic is called personalized genomic medicine, tailoring wellness to your genetics. Now, personalized genomic medicine used to be called precision medicine, but that's not very descriptive. Actually, precision medicine is better called personalized genomic medicine, which is the words we're supposed to use now. This means we know something about our genetics, and then we ask ourselves, if we know about our personal genetics, or if your doctor knows about your personal genetics, or if 23andMe knows about your personal genetics, does that affect your personal health? Can we use understanding our genetics to prevent disease? Can we use knowing about our genetics to optimize diagnosing and treating disease? And how can we use knowledge of our genetics to optimize medication and supplements? That's called pharmacogenomics. And there is an entire branch of pharmacology now called pharmacogenomics, which looks to link treatment for diseases to the underlying genetic cause of the diseases and the underlying genetics that have gone wrong. One of the things I point to in this is breast cancer. One of the most important things a candidate with breast cancer can have is to have their genetics tested to see if their breast cancer is estrogen receptor positive, progesterone receptor positive, HER2 positive, or none of the above. And that will dictate treatment because there are certain types of cancer for which tamoxifen is appropriate and certain types of cancer for which it would not be. So personalized genomic medicine is a huge business, and I predict that a number of years from now, we will simply all have our genome ready to download. And anytime you're sick and go to the doctor will simply take a look at your genome and will say, no, you can't use aspirin. You don't metabolize aspirin correctly. Aspirin's not going to work for you. We'll have to find something else. The last week will be gender and sex. It's not as simple as XX and XY. And when I did research, when I was an active research faculty, my group specialized in sexual differentiation of the brain. And so one of my interests of life is the idea of how what goes on in our brain, particularly as a fetus and later in life, is affects our perception of gender and our perception of sexual persuasion. So I have developed a process for analyzing gender and sex, where I have 4 levels of gender and sex: chromosomal sex, anatomical sex, physiological sex, and brain sex. And those things are all different. And we'll talk about those things and how they affect gender perception and sexual orientation, which are not the same things. It's interesting to note that most transgenders do not change the sex with whom they sleep, because gender perception and sexual orientation are not in the same part of your brain. So that's the class. I hope to see you in class. Unlike most of the past classes, except for the Zoom ones, which I never used PowerPoints. I have a moral objection to PowerPoints. I used to draw in colors on the blackboard. I think because I have now so many PowerPoints for these classes, I'll probably use a lot of PowerPoints in the classes now, and I'll make the salient PowerPoints available to you in your course pack, so you will be able to have them to write on and to look at and to look back upon. Because I don't permit recording of the classes and I don't give out my PowerPoint collection, but I do make salient PowerPoints available to you, the ones that are the most important, and then you will have them as a record for the class. So I hope to see you there. It's always fun, and I've made a lot of great friends through my classes. Some of them are in my ukulele group, others of them are in Faculty Emeriti, so it seems we see each other all the time. So I look forward to seeing you and to see into this semester of this brand new semester of in-person lifelong learning.
Thank you, Anne. Let me get my sharing back up. Moving right along, I'd like to introduce Dianna Black. The title of Dianna's course is From Grimm's to Harry Potter, and it has a subtitle, Understanding, Selecting, and Reading Aloud from Children's Literature. If you look online, Dianna's bio, tremendous bio, things that I won't go through all of it, but Dianna, I love the work that you're doing to diversify and select inclusive children's books. But I will share that you're a mother of 2. That's something that you put in your bio. You're a master storyteller and performer for young people, and you teach writing and critical thinking at James Madison University. This class here is going to be offered in person. It will begin September the 2nd through September the 23rd. It's offered on Thursday afternoons from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. And like our other classes, the standard fee here applies of $40.
Okay, thank you so much for that introduction. I am delighted to be with you today. I am going to go ahead and share my presentation with you. So this course is called From the Grimms to Harry Potter, Understanding, Selecting, and Reading Aloud from Children's Literature. So you should be able to see a very wise looking group of birds. All right. And for the purposes of this course, we're going to be focusing almost exclusively on the literatures for children that are in English, which is a lot. And we're going to be covering a lot of ground in not so much time. So let's talk about what we're going to be doing in the class, starting with the question of selection. This is envisioned as a highly practical class. When I was designing it, I thought a lot about my parents, who are grandparents, of course, and their friends and the questions that they asked me frequently. So though it has discussion and creative elements, I'm going to be thinking about this in terms of its use to people who have children in their lives and are looking to be more effective in their choices of books and some of their other habits with relation to books. So I will be covering children's book genres, formats, and even touching upon their history, which is fascinating insofar as it's helpful for us and with our time constraints in mind. So I would love to teach you a semester-long seminar about the history of children's literature, but alas, it is not to be, at least not this time. So the good and the bad news, there are so many children's books available nowadays. You've noticed probably that the market is saturated with options. So how do you choose the right book? Is there a right book for the kids in your life? I imagine you've found yourself in situations before when you're at the library or at the bookstore when you felt absolutely overwhelmed with choices of kids' books, board books, chapter books, picture books, graphic novels, pop-ups, lift the flaps, nonfiction, fiction. It's very easy to get overwhelmed, I understand. So how should you handle this glut of choices, this embarrassment of riches? In this class, I will give you some of my easy ways to simplify the process so that you can get the most out of your children's books. So what's the single most important piece of advice I can impart about this choosing books for children procedure? I would say 3 simple words: follow their bliss. In other words, know what the child is interested in and be supportive of that interest by bringing them as many books as you can on the subject. Now, this may seem glaringly obvious, but hear me out. You'll also need to accept that those interests that the child expresses, much like your own, can change and evolve, and they might sustain them for a long time, longer than you'd like, or they might discard them like a piece of gum, and that's okay. The best way to be up to date about a child's interests is to simply ask about them. So here on the slide, we have a child who's got a new interest in gardening with grandpa. And there is just a very small sampling of the books that grandpa could bring that child to deepen that interest. So you follow up with corresponding books, you show enthusiasm and respect for the child's interests. Kids really love to have their passions taken seriously and not scoffed at. I didn't realize when my now 3.5-year-old first developed his obsession with giant squid, true fact, that his dad and I would love learning about these creatures. And I didn't know that reading about them would open up doors to related art projects for him, explorations, even friendships for our boy. Books can do that for you and your child. They open us up. And I very gently suggest that you try not to be prescriptive about what the child should like or should be interested in. Maybe you think the interest is babyish or not at their reading level, or it's too boyish, too girlish, too whatever. It'll be all right. It's good to be interested in something, in anything, and read about it. I wasn't excited about construction vehicle books at first, but I nonetheless provided a host of books about them, and I couldn't help but find my son's enthusiasm for them infectious. Now, does this mean that everything the child is given to read must align perfectly with their current crop of interests? Certainly not. You don't have to be limited to books that are about exactly the thing the child is excited about at that time. Sometimes you won't be able to find any, although I am going to teach you some handy-dandy methods for discovering books by topic, but to try to discern what it is about that interest that sparks their imagination and ignites something in them, and get them something to read with those same elements. But choosing a book isn't as straightforward as just following a child's bliss, as we all know. Sometimes you're aiming to do more with your books. So this is a really quick preview of the kind of thing we'll be talking about. So choosing a book, what can this book do for this child and for you? I'm guessing you don't ordinarily choose books for children by considering your purpose in doing so. But I'm going to argue here and throughout the course that we can and should think about our purpose for selecting books and let that guide our navigation and our writing as well. For example, you may choose a book because of the values it embodies. Let's say that resilience is a core value for you, something you'd really like the child to develop. You find a book with a character who persists in the face of repeated failures and eventually succeeds. Because the book's values resonated with your own, you got to show the child rather than tell them the merits of grit without ever having to lecture. It's introduced this concept in a child-friendly way, and it's also a means of getting into a meaningful conversation with the child about that quality that matters to you. No matter what value you're hoping to instill, you will find children's books that speak to its importance. And so imparting values is just one of the things that a well-chosen book can accomplish. A solid choice of book should hit upon at least one of your goals, but I've listed inculcate values, provide instruction of some kind, deepen understanding, offer diversion, validate feelings and identity, expand imagination and awareness, foster connection. One of the things that I love most about books for children is their incredible richness, that the more time you spend with them, looking at them closely and absorbing them, the more power you begin to realize they have. If you'd like to look at children's literature in new ways that deepen your understanding of how they work, if you're eager to read them aloud with confidence and style, if you want to choose books with intention and ease, and if you want to use that knowledge you gain to begin crafting a manuscript for a particular child in your life, then this course is the one for you. And even if only one of those parts of the course is appealing, we're always open, at least I am, to assessing the primary interests of the students in the class at the outset and tailoring the course accordingly. So if I find that most of you are primarily interested in the aspect of crafting a manuscript, then we'll focus on that. If I find more of you are interested in reading aloud more effectively, then we'll focus on that more. The primacy of your interests is going to be king, just like the primacy of the child's interests will be king when it comes to choosing books for them. Thank you so much. I hope to see you this fall.
Thank you, Diana. Let me get your screen sharing stopped there, and then I will start mine. And Diana, one thing I love about your course, one, I have young children at home, so I could see how it would be relevant to my life. I read to them every night before putting them to bed, but I love the performance aspect, not just learning about the history, but how to make literature come alive. And this is a genre of literature that we haven't often explored, even though that it might have connections to the grandchildren in our lives, the children in our lives, as well as some of the volunteer opportunities that people take on. I'm going to start screen sharing here. The next instructor we have is Peter Dalton. Peter, by way of his bio, Peter has a degree in education and is currently a battlefield guide in the Shenandoah Valley. Many of you have taken Civil War courses with Peter over the last few years, and he always finds a different angle of how to engage students in that conversation and learning about that history. So Peter's going to be leading 2 classes, and I'm just going to go over the details and leave most of the time for Peter to explain. The first class is Civil War, Emancipation, and Reconstruction in the Shenandoah Valley. This class will be offered by Zoom, September the 2nd through October the 7th. Like Jennifer, Peter has brought students in from different states. So we kept this online so that those students could continue learning with us remotely. This class will be offered on Thursday mornings from 10 to 11:30 a.m. The cost is $40. The next course that Peter is going to be leading is Shenandoah Valley Battle Studies program. This is a little different because this is a field study class that will have one class where people get together for the first meeting. I think that will be conducted by Zoom. And then you will go to different locations that you are part of selecting. Peter will explain that process. But this is in person primarily, September the 6th through September the 27th, offered on Monday mornings from 10 to 11:30 a.m. The fee for that course is also $40. Peter, I'll get you unmuted and turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's good to be back. I wanted to give at least a description. This is probably the 4th in a series. This is 4th in the series of classes we've conducted, starting with the beginning of the Civil War and working our way all the way through it. This class that we have that we're going to be doing, the very first one has to do with the Shenandoah Valley and really what happens in the Shenandoah Valley at the end of the Civil War and then beyond the Civil War, and the impact of things which people that that live in Shenandoah, Rockingham, Augusta, Frederick counties, in many cases are still living with. So we're going to have a 6-week class. The very first week, we're going to be reviewing some of the major events in the Shenandoah Valley during the last year of the Civil War. It kind of reviews some of the things that were discussed in the class that that was offered the last semester. And then week 2, we're going to discuss in brief the burning of the valley, the impact it has, and then the recovery that the Shenandoah Valley has to go through after the war is over, and also, what the farmers are up against as a result of the burning of the valley. We're going to talk about the history of slavery in the valley, and then the impact that emancipation has upon the residents of the valley as well in week 3. In week 4, we're going to talk about emancipation again, and once again, some specialized items and things that most people wouldn't know perhaps about what emancipation does when thousands of people that have been in bondage all their life suddenly find that they're free. And those are the kind of things that we'll be talking about in week 4. In week 5, we're going to talk about the Freedmen's Bureau and the impact that it has upon the people in the valley at that time. And then in week 6, we're going to talk about life in the valley after the Reconstruction period, that 4-year period that following the end of the Civil War itself. So that's the goal of the class. And like I said, it has been a series of classes that's worked us all the way from the beginning of the Civil War and its impact in the valley all the way to the end, and now to the end and beyond. That would be the first class. The second one would begin on a Monday on September 6th. I would have a meeting. This class has to do with field studies, trips to Shenandoah Valley battlefields. The first class that we would have would actually be one that I would choose. That kind of makes it easier. We would also have a preliminary meeting in which we would discuss where we're going to meet, how we're going to meet, and some of the other technical things that need to be done. The first battlefield that we'd be visiting would be the Battle of Kernstown, which occurs in March of 1862. And then we'll also discuss which 3 other battlefields we would want to visit. And I've given a list of those possible battlefields, which would include McDowell, Front Royal, Tom's Brook, Fisher's Hill, Piedmont, Cool Spring. And it's even possible that, some people might like to concentrate on the Battle of Newmarket. I would be providing materials to the class members, including maps and things like that. And we would all meet at specified locations and then go on from there to tour the battlefields, talk about the people that are involved and the impact that each one of these battles has upon the overall course of the American Civil War. So those are very quickly the 2 classes that are being offered. And I would say that's, Rodney, that's all that I have on that, okay?
Thank you, Pete. And I know that these courses are always well attended. Again, registration opens tomorrow at 10 a.m. Let me get your screen sharing. There we go. And I'll begin this. But I mentioned that registration begins tomorrow because of we do, as we return to in-person learning opportunities, sometimes we have capacity limits that we don't have on Zoom. We are trying to be flexible, and I will work with our instructors as much as we can to find out how we can accommodate as many students as possible. But I do want to remind you, some of these programs that are in person, they might have capacity limits. I didn't mention that at the top of the hour. The next person I'd like to introduce is Dr. Ralph Allen. Ralph will be leading a class called Colors, Why We See Them and How They Impact Our Lives. This class will be offered in person beginning October 13th. It goes through November 17th. This is offered on Wednesday afternoons from 1:30 to 3 p.m. Again, the course fee is $40. And I should say from Ralph, Ralph, just like I mentioned for some of the others being faculty emeriti at JMU, Ralph is a faculty emeritus member of the University of Virginia. Let me get you unmuted, Ralph.
Okay, well, thank you, Rodney. As opposed to what I often end up doing, relying upon a PowerPoint as kind of lecture notes, I thought this would perhaps be a good way to tell you why I decided to tell something about color. People have asked me, color, what's that all about? I was involved in analyzing the first samples that came back from the moon. And this picture of Buzz Aldrin on the moon shows what lack of color, the way we normally sense it, is all about. How boring it would be to be on the moon. Now, kind of exciting for somebody to be there the first time, but when the brightest colors are the American flag that was put up on the surface of the moon, it really sort of indicates, how important color is for all of us. And so how we experience the world around us is the interaction of light and the interaction of color that comes from the light. And the whole point of the thing is that we experience color that's in the light, but without light, we don't have color. We don't see color. We don't detect it. And so as an analytical chemist, one of the things that I did throughout my career was utilize the light that we saw or didn't see in some cases that would tell us something about the material world around us and allow us to say something about a universe that we really couldn't go and sample. We knew a lot about the moon from the light that was reflected off the surface from the sun long before we went to the moon. We know something about the composition of our solar system because we look at the light that comes from the sun that irradiates us and find that there's certain wavelengths or certain colors that are missing from it that tell us something about the composition of that. And so how we learn about the world around us depends upon color. And so how is it that things are colored or take on color, at least as we perceive it? So why is something bright like red have certain kind of influence on us? It may associate with a school that we went to, or it may associate with something that's hot or something that's devilish, any number of things that it has a impact upon us when we sort of visually perceive it. Now, the way we detect color is sort of like what artists rely upon when they talk about a color wheel, where in fact 3 colors can be used to make up all the infinite number of other colors that we perceive. Well, why is it that that is the case? And how is it that animals see color? How is it that animals have evolved in terms of color and pattern that allow them to either disguise themselves or to attract others of the opposite sex? All of those kinds of things are sort of part of the fascinating story of really what color is all about. My involvement in color, again, was because we were utilizing color to measure things. The colors that we see rely upon what is being absorbed by a material or what is being reflected from a material or what is being refracted from a material. Most of the colors that we see are not from the emission of the colors themselves, although when we watch fireworks, that is the emission of colors. And how is it that that is different? And so we not only sort of perceive these in the world around us, we sort of wonder, why is it that the difference in the color of green that we see when we look at the trees, why does some of it look darker than some of it? Well, it's the interaction of light and how much interaction there is with the material and how much light there is in terms of how we perceive it. So then as artists, we try to reproduce those colors so that we can sort of permanently hold them. And I mean, both in terms of the oil painters and the watercolor painters, the kinds of paints that they use were originally sort of based upon what you could find. And so the first primitive bits of art are in fact earth tone colors, black and brown and kind of a dingy red. All of those were the natural materials that people found. But in time, people learned to take other materials that they had found in nature that had some color and mix them to become colors that they could use to apply to things. So we'll talk about the difference between pigments that color paints and dyes which color clothes, and why it is that certain colors like purple end up being associated with royalty. Red becomes important in terms of both Christianity, that the cardinals would wear it, and in terms of the military, because the British wore it. And why that particular color of red depended upon a lot of little bugs. And those are the kinds of things that we want to sort of talk about in this course. I'm going to rely upon some of my friends who are artists and painters to talk a little bit about how they manage to meld colors together from those three primary colors, or the natural colors, or the artificial colors that we've added because of the chemistry that people sort of have evolved over the time to produce the colors that people wanted in their paints. And we'll also talk about dyes, what's different about the things that we put to make cotton or the other fabrics, nylon, become colored as we perceive them. So there's a lot there, and it includes things that we decorate our homes as well as decorate our clothing and decorate our faces, so that we have materials that have been evolved over time to allow us to pull out colors that make us comfortable, that make us happy, or make us frightened, whatever it is we're trying to produce in certain terms of effects. So we'll talk about all of those kinds of things, and anything else about color that people want to talk about.
Thank you, Ralph. I want to introduce, just for the sake of time, quickly, I'll transition to our last scheduled presenter today, Dr. Mary Louise Lowe, who will be leading a class on the French Impressionists, their lives, paintings, and legacy. Like Clarence and others, Mary Louise has been a longtime friend of the university and the program, and she is a faculty emerita who teaches in the history department and has since 1973. Her class will be in person beginning October 13th through November 17th. Do know that this class runs 6 weeks, and it will meet on Wednesdays from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. The 6-week schedule, the 12 hours in class, is what justifies the higher registration fee of $50. Louise, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. You can hear me? Yeah, I'm going to be teaching a course on the French Impressionists, who were a group of very interesting artists. I think the talk that just preceded mine of Ralph Allen is interesting because the Impressionists were particularly concerned about color. And they were a group who came together in the 1860s came from very diverse backgrounds. And what had happened was that they were concerned that the École des Beaux-Arts, which was the official school for artists, was far too rigid and conventional and made all kinds of rules about what painting was acceptable. So individually, they had kind of come to the same conclusions. They met in these studios, and they basically decided to move away from trying to work in the École des Beaux-Arts and instead to work together. And what the artists included a very large number of people, but the ones who are most famous are Claude Monet, Camille Pissarro, Paul Cézanne, Alfred Sisley, Edgar Degas, Bertha Morisot, and one American, Mary Cassatt. Edward Manet was associated with this group, but he always refused to exhibit with them. And basically what happened was that they decided finally that in order to be able to present their work, they would try and organize their own exhibitions. And so starting in 1874, and I might mention that in 1870-71, there was a major war in France, the Franco-Prussian War, which had all sorts of long-term consequences. And some of the artists, Monet and Pissarro, went and lived in England, which influenced them there. So what will happen will be, starting in 1874, these artists came together and they decided to organize an exhibition. And they formed the Anonymous Society of Painters and Sculptors and so forth. Well, when they started their exhibition, they had no idea how the public would react. The critics were just horrible. They were very, very nasty. The irony was that the one painting that Monet had done, which was called Impression Sunrise, which he had done in England, the critic made fun of it and said, you know, impressionists, how silly, and all the other critics joined in. It was shocking how nasty they could be. But several years later, the artists decided, well, what the heck? Almost as a rebuke to the critics, they took the name Impressionists. And of course, today they're the most famous artists in the world. But at that time, they really had a very difficult time. So they continued to have exhibitions. Some of them stayed with the group, some didn't. But basically from, excuse me, 1874 until 86, they had these exhibitions. And slowly, the public began to accept them. It was mainly when a French critic decided to take several hundred paintings to New York and then to display them in the United States. And the American critics became very positive. They wrote very positive reviews. And after that, that was in 1885, you started to have a number of French critics being more receptive. What is important is that how did these Impressionists differ from other artists? They were mainly concerned with portraying everyday life rather than religious, mythological, or historical subjects, which was what the Academy expected. The other thing was that they used brushstrokes and they enabled their brushstrokes to be seen, which was not acceptable. And getting back to what Mr. Allen was saying, they were mainly concerned in capturing the quality of light. So they worked in the outdoors. They wanted to capture the color of outdoors. Monet said there were an infinite number of greens as he painted outside. They also were interested in painting modern life indoors, the cafes, the theaters, people with their families. But the most important thing was that they were rejecting the traditional view that painting should be historical, mythological, or religious. And so they went through a very difficult time. It's tragic when you think Monet was constantly in debt, in poverty. Now his paintings sell for millions and millions of dollars. But they continue to persist. And Americans heard about them, and many Americans came to France. They were already coming since the 1830s. But the famous American painters, Whistler and Child Hassan and John Singer Sargent, came to France to study with the Impressionists. And one of the results of that was that the Americans went back to the United States, and they then took off. You had a number of Impressionist colonies which were established in New England. So the important thing is that these artists had tremendous impact. Today, the Impressionists are the most popular. There are exhibits and hundreds of books about them. They're universally loved. But during their time, not until the really late 1880s did they begin to be accepted and get recognition. And what was sad about it was that some of them died quite early, and the result was that they never really achieved fame or even financial security during their lifetimes. And so what I want to do in the class is discuss the lives of these people. I always find in studying history that the lives are very interesting, and in preparing for the course, I read quite a few biographies and critical studies. And they were very different. They came from, as I said, different backgrounds. Monet, who was extremely poor in the beginning, was supported by Manet, Calibo. There were a number of them who were wealthy and who helped the others. In the 90s, they came into conflict over a major case, the Dreyfus case, which you may have heard of, who was a Jew who was accused of military spying. And even though he was exonerated, it divided the French people and these artists very much into separate camps. So what I'll do in class is I'm going to show many slides of their paintings. We'll discuss who they were, what they were trying to do, and their long-term impact. Even today, critics and art historians don't agree on all sorts of things. Who was the founder of modern art? Who was a post-impressionist versus an impressionist? But there's no question that these artists are very popular, partially because they offer a very beautiful view of the past. These beautiful scenes of gardens and outdoors and cafes and people having a good time. Only Degas, really, of the bunch of them who did a lot on ballet, really showed the seedier sides of life in Paris. But the main thing is, this was a period known as La Belle Époque, this famous, beautiful period at the end of the century. And Paris was a very, very exciting place to be. There were many Americans who came there. Amazing how many, given the difficulty getting there. But of course, many of the Americans who went were from wealthy families as well, such as Mary Cassatt. Anyway, I just all my life have been fascinated by the Impressionists. I'm sure many of you have enjoyed seeing them in exhibits and so forth. So this will just hopefully give another new dimension to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. And Sue, at this point, I'm going to open it for questions for anyone who has questions about the instructors connected here, or questions about anything I presented about changes for the semester ahead. And while you restore microphone access, I'll just remind everyone that class registration begins tomorrow at 10 a.m. We wanted to provide this public preview so that people know what's coming. Even though some of these classes won't start until maybe October, we turn registration on for all of them all at once. But at this point, if there are any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. I've tried to answer the questions in the chat window as we've been going along. So if you typed in a question, I typed in a response, take a quick look there, just in case your question has already been answered. But Sue and I plan to stay connected for as long as needed today, just to give you all the information you need before tomorrow. So feel free, I'll pause and we'll take your questions now. Well, I do want to say thank you to all of our presenters. What we tried to do was to give you an idea. This is just a subset, about 25% of the courses that will be offered as we get things underway here next week. But you heard from people in art, science, history, literature, music. There are many other courses and disciplines that you can check out online. Again, these are just about 10 of the 40 that we will be offering. And someone did ask a question, will courses be repeated as part of second session? I just want to clarify, it's a little different this year. Once courses get underway next week, they come online like every month. We will have new courses. It's one continuous semester. There's no A, there's no B, it's just, this is the next semester, and things every month, you will have new courses all the way through December. We do not plan to repeat courses, but we are afraid that maybe we haven't planned as many courses as we don't know the need. So if we find out that people are just really interested in taking in-person classes or online classes, and we need to add sessions, we have developed our structure in a way and our schedule in a way that I could bring another course online if it fills up. So some of the instructors who lead popular courses, behind the scenes, we said, look, if your class fills up, we'll try to get another session open and available to accommodate the overflow. So that's the theme of this year. We're trying to be flexible. We're trying to meet your needs. And if it requires adding another course or two, we will do that with regard to instructor availability. But that's the way we've been working during COVID, and it worked really well. If things fill up, we'll try to accommodate the waiting list by scheduling another class. But the reason for this continuous cycle is just it allows us to be flexible. It allows us to be accommodating. And if there's need there that we haven't planned for, it allows us to adjust our schedule to provide you with what you want. And that's what we're going to try to do to the best of our ability from now until mid-December. I'm looking at some of these other ones. Some people ask, can you register other people? You would have to log in as that person, one login, one registration. If you need help with that, just give us a call or come by. We're able to register people by logging in by proxy. So Bev, if you have a problem registering Sam, just give us a call and we'll be able to take care of that. The other one, Linda Bradley says, she mentioned some schedule. This is just one of several course previews that we've scheduled. We're going to be taking some instructors, I guess, on the road, so to speak. So in the next 2 weeks, if you live at a retirement community, we're coming to your community to see you in person. And I'll have 4 or 5 instructors with me. Some of them will be the same as presenting today. I know Jennifer is going to join us for a few sessions. I think Pete's going to join us for a session. Some of them will be people who are not here today. So ahead of that, we will send out just an email. If you live at those retirement communities, we'll send out an email with the lineup of instructors who will be presenting over the next 2 weeks at Sunnyside, Bridgewater, and VMRC. And I imagine this is not the only Zoom preview that we provide, because when we get courses underway and we head toward October and November classes, I imagine we will get other voices and other people. We will announce that, and you'll hear from some of the people you haven't heard from today. There's some interesting things that we have online. And one, I just want to mention, when we get to September, you're going to be hearing from Dr. Mark Stern. Dr. Stern will be teaching from Arizona. So he has a different time zone. He'll be teaching through Zoom. But I think that we will create another online program like this to hear from another cluster of instructors who you met and you haven't heard from. So we want to introduce those to you. Any other questions that are not in the chat window before I close this out? Well, with that, friends, I'll say thanks for attending. Thanks for your time and your patience today as we navigated all of these transitions. We look forward to welcoming you back in campus.
She's going to answer.
I hope to see you in the Ice House soon. So beginning tomorrow, feel free to come by. And if you're fully vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask. But good day, and we look forward to learning with you this summer and this fall.
Rodney,
Yes.
I have a lot of your keys over here, room
I'll
keys.
forget that. Thank you, Clarence. All right, friends, take care. We'll see you soon.